The Matlanga Commission of Inquiry has heard about how the Political Killings Task Team was formed, as well as who was responsible for the operations. Crime intelligence boss Dumisani Khumalo has today shared how in the initial phases, the group worked in silos, which led to a need to adopt an investigations and prosecutorial-led approach. The leader of the PKTT gave evidence about a stalemate between himself and now suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya, who would fill key crime intelligence posts when they were advertised last year. Joining us now is Jeremy Vearey, the former Western Cape head of detectives. Thank you so much for your time, Jeremy, and for joining us this afternoon. So maybe let's just talk about the relationship between General Khumalo as well as the Deputy National Commissioner. And we know that in many instances, it's quite common in any workplace for people to have differences, especially when it comes to the methodology of how certain things are being done. But in this instance, when there is that impasse with regards to those very important posts that need to be filled, does this give an indication of what may have been ulterior motives by General Sibiya?
I think we need to understand General Khumalo's actions around not necessarily being candid enough about what he was investigating around Molefe and Kat and all those people, within the context that General Sibiya also came on to the radar as a suspect in that investigation, in terms of possible relations with those people that needed to be clarified by further investigation first. So therefore, the guardedness with which General Khumalo would approach his relationship with General Sibiya is understandable from that perspective. It's not uncommon. A few years ago, with myself as an example, and General Jacobs, we led a project of guns to gang and arrested police officers. And before that, given that the CFR environment where these police officers were stationed, all had clean reports about the stores and the guns being there, we automatically had to suspect all generals involved in having having cleared those stores to be in functional order, or sound order for that matter, despite the theft of over 10,000 firearms that were meant to be destroyed. So in those scenarios, until whoever signed that report, be it a provincial commissioner that went to inspect there, be that a senior officer at top management who did not exercise the necessary oversight administratively, you treat everyone as a suspect until proven otherwise. And in the case of our investigation, we kept things secret even from the National Commissioner for 3 years, and from all deputy national commissioners, until such time that we made the particular arrests and have clarified the individual bona fides. So it is perfectly normal to work in this particular way, especially if you look at what is coming out from the commission, where you have allegations floating around of high-level corruption, alleged corruption, in circles you cannot afford to report to, or you cannot even report directly to your commander, because you first have to clarify whether your commander is clean.
Right.
We've done it before. We've worked this way. We work that way. It's natural for any detective to do it in that way.
To work in that sense. I mean, if we go back to Khumalo's testimony from yesterday, and he brought up the issue of James Shadrack, who is the owner of that Toyota Hilux that we see at the residency of Sibiya when there was that search and seizure operation that happened at his home. And this is an individual who's got over 34 cases, 18 of which he had been found guilty. And he also appeared to be seemingly as if he was Sibiya's security detail when he appeared at the ad hoc committee. So the issue of security around SAPS officials then came up, and him saying that quite often those would be SAPS members that would form part of the security detail and the protectors of SAPS. Is it unusual for an official to then opt not to use security detail from SAPS and rather possibly more private protection detail?
It is indeed very, very unusual. As firstly, all protection at a policing level is preceded by a threat analysis or threat appraisal that determines whether or not such security is warranted and the degree to which it must occur. And those resources to, if it is warranted, gets drawn from the SAPS itself, from our specialized unit environment. So to me, the use of a private person, firstly, two questions arise. Where's the money coming from? Because it's quite an expensive business to employ bodyguards. The second thing is, if you have elected to do that, and you're a senior officer, one would hope you have done the due diligence test to determine whether your bodyguard is clean. Because you remember, your bodyguard is going with you into intimate spaces, into sensitive spaces that you are also privy to. For example, your bodyguard in this particular case, if it is true, the chap was in Parliament with him, if that is true. The biggest, most disturbing to me is how such a person gets into Parliament, firstly, with such a kind of record, and what kind of shenanigans and maneuvers needed to be done to effect such a gross violation of allowing a person of that nature to not only fulfill that function as a bodyguard, but also go and do that right in Parliament in front of the portfolio committee. I mean, where was the access control to eliminate, to flag an individual of that nature? The second thing is, what disturbs me, this person has a very long criminal record. What would be interesting is to determine, if you're a bodyguard, you have a firearm. And if you have a firearm license, my first question with a person like that would be, how did you get it in the first place? Because with the type of record that you have, if you have convictions for carjacking and those things, there is no way you are going to get a firearm license except through corrupt means, which also happens. Like on the Cape Flats, most of our gang leaders all have licensed firearms, 4 or 5 at a time for that. And so it's a disturbing thing from that perspective. So a lot needs to be investigated here. And the second thing that is important is General Sibiya has the case to answer for the utilization of this person.
I mean, if we're speaking about General Sibiya having to answer for the utilization of this person and just some of the associations that seemingly are coming up at the Madlanga Commission, what picture does this paint for us with regards to those that are in the top brass and the affiliations and the alleged associations with characters such as Shadrack, such as Matlala, such as Brown Mokhotsi and the Mulifez of this world?
If what is said is proven, and if a general in the police, deputy national, elects to have private security, it's clear that there's very little confidence from that general's part in the situation if that was a legitimate move. If it is but either way, legitimate or illegitimate doesn't matter to me. It points to great distrust in the system's ability to protect you. It deploys at that level to serious managerial dysfunction at the top management level. So to me, we ought to be asking more systemic questions now. If generals are at war, if there's a war of the generals at that nature where they use state resources, they use units below them to fight their turf wars, then that degree of dysfunction is disturbing. And possibly there's a need for us to look at an overall at management level through placing national management of the police under administration. We need to consider these options at a systemic level beyond just the allegations that are around, because they point to serious systemic dysfunction
Right.
at a level of national management.
Most certainly. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. We certainly will be getting a clearer picture coming from that Madlanga Commission. That was Jeremy Vearey, who's the former Western Cape head of detectives.